Sorry about that. One of the things I've learned from the last few weeks of doing some code on stream is that if I'm being blinded by the sun, I am less effective. And half of the fun of doing these broadcasts is learning how to code with that underlying sea of terror about doing something like leaking out API keys on stream, which I only do about half the time. Anyway, it's Wednesday, and I am back after a 3-week hiatus of me being super duper lazy. And today we are going to work on one of my smaller projects, not the larger project I spent most of the time working on. Most of the time it's been spent on this Cloud Spin cool demo thing. But I've been spending, the last time I streamed from Krakow, Poland, and there I worked on a little tiny program. What I want to do is I want to write a JavaScript program that runs in a Google Cloud function. So let me kind of put it on these notes. Design. So I want a little JS program. So what I want is I want to read from the Twitch API. I want to find out specifically, get the number of people live coding. And I also want to get the number of live code viewers. And I want to take that information and I want to feed it into, I want to pull that from the API using JavaScript in a Cloud function. Google Cloud Functions. And I want to take that information and further feed it into a Google spreadsheet. A Google Sheet. And so this is something that I can probably hack up in about 2 minutes using some terribly insecure, remote code injection vulnerable shell script, which I spent some time tinkering with last time, but I didn't actually flesh out. But I think I might just flesh out this time for reference. So let me kind of make up a to-do list. To-do. Okay, so let's model this the lazy way. I bet we can do this with a one-liner on shell. Then I'm going to spend a little bit of time explaining why this is not always the best way to solve problems. And then we'll use that as kind of our reference, start porting it over to JavaScript. And if any of you have seen some of my past broadcasts, I don't really actually know modern JavaScript. The last time I spent a lot of time coding in JavaScript was in the jQuery days. So, which I actually got to the point, I actually taught university classes on jQuery. I know, crazy, isn't it? But anyway, I don't know modern JavaScript. So this is where the fumbling through software development stuff really becomes the deal. So I'll be spending some time fumbling around, porting that behavior over to JavaScript and figuring out how to promisify or async await or something like that. This design, which I'm still wrapping my head around. And then, once that is running, we will learn how to take that program and we'll push it up to Cloud Functions. Google Cloud Functions. And the reason I want to use Google Cloud Functions is because I want this program to be sandboxed off. And this seems like a cool way to try and do that. This is not the primary use case of Google Cloud Functions, but I want to give it a spin. Then I need to figure out how to do some cron-like thing. I think there's an open source project for this. So if I just search for Google Cloud Functions, cron, there is a wonderful open source project that, of course, the Firebase team has published for us. And it's pretty active. It's cool. So it has some activity a few months ago. And I don't think it's obsolete yet. I'm expecting this behavior to get built in at some point, but we will verify that that is still the state of the art. And based on the README, it does appear to be cron-like thing. So cron it. And by this, I want it to run roughly every hour or so. And then finally, okay, so port it over to JavaScript. Oh yeah, the one-liners also I'm going to feed into plain text. The second kind of leg of this thing is I want to take, after I port it over to JavaScript, I want to, actually when should I make it interact with the spreadsheet? A one-liner would be cool, but I don't really want to do all the auth stuff. So I will wait until I've already ported it over JavaScript, and that is when I will make it feed into a spreadsheet, which will be more fumbling around because I have never used the spreadsheet API. After like 6 years in developer relations at Google, the spreadsheet API is something I've done very little with. Yeah. This should be a fun experiment. There are probably definitely other ways to do this, many of which are probably superior, but there are a couple areas I want to focus my time on just because I want to learn them. And half the reason I hack around in this stuff is to learn other things. Oh yeah, today's coffee is just some cold brew I made in a beaker. I drink a lot of drinks out of beakers because, I don't know, I'm a nerd. They're high quality glass, and they're really cheap when you buy them in bulk. So yes, they don't stack like a lot of cups do, but if you want to be a fancy nerd, go find some labware. Make sure it has never been used so you don't like die of heavy metal poisoning or something else bad. But yeah. Okay, so let's get into this. So I guess there's even another kind of pre-to-do, which is kind of recap what we did before. Because I never actually, one thing I just realized when I was getting ready for today is I never actually posted the video I made in Poland on the internet. And I also can't really find my code. I found some stuff. Let's take a look at what's going on there. Okay, so let me bring up the shell, which is indistinguishable from my Vim because black backgrounds are nice. And let's do Twitch tracker. I called it Twitch tracker. And I thought I was coding in JavaScript before, but I was pretty jet lagged. Apparently I was coding in Python. Which, oh, and it's not even really completely Python. It's actually like a couple shell programs up here, like some stuff copied and pasted from my command line. And apparently I tinkered around in like a replet or some other like REPL, and then I just pasted a bunch of stuff in here. Yeah, this is just like a log from a REPL. But hey, I saved some code. This is hilarious. This is why I should probably actually be using version control as I do these broadcasts, which is something I think I may do today. Okay, so let's take a step back. Let's move what we have into version control. So we recapped what we had before, and it is madness. I blame jet lag. Maybe a little bit of Polish vodka, which was delicious, by the way. If you're ever in Poland, they would not be, I would say they're not known for their beer, but the vodka is definitely amazing. Okay, so next up, let's move what we got to source control. So to do this, because of layer cats, I'm going to have to add a license header. So I'm going to go fetch a license header. Actually, I think I already have them in a Vim buffer somewhere. So there we go, license headers. So I am an agent of Google, so I have license headers that I stick into my files. Copy this, paste it in here, and what we're going to do is we're going to patch an existing repository. Oh yeah, and the reason the license headers go into all the files I upload is to protect you from layer cats, so that you know what you can use in places. So you know where you can use this code. It protects all of us. It makes everything happier. Okay, so let me go ahead and move this path over to my snippets repo. Do I have the snippets repo checked out? Let's find out. I don't know if you want to see all of that stuff, but I don't think there's anything confidential in terms of project names. Some talks I worked on. I don't think my snippets repo is in here right now. Okay. Oh yes, and I have been hacking around with Firestore, which, if you have not checked out Cloud Firestore yet, you totally should. It is awesome. It is the next generation database we released recently as another goodie in the goodie bag of Firebase stuff. Okay, so what we want to go to is github.com /me. And am I logged in? I am not logged in as myself, but we can probably find my snippets repo. So there's a snippets repo. It's just called snippets. And this is a repo that I've already kind of made sure all of the licensing and stuff is set up to protect all of you, and I just dump kind of small chunks of code in here. So what I'm going to do as part of my work on these streams is I'll be pushing stuff here live, and then later I'll be copying stuff over into their own repo once they reach enough weight. So is snippets already checked out? Because I can't read, but I can tab complete. Okay, it's not checked out. So I am going to sign into GitHub. I'm going to do that off screen. So we're going to go into, I don't even need to go into super duper hacker mode. I can just do it on my second monitor. Oh yeah, and here's an important thing. Are you using security keys for your GitHub? Because you should be, because U2F security keys are awesome. They're these little tiny things, and you press a button and it does cryptographic magic, which isn't magic, it's just math, but it's awesome. But you should totally be using them for your GitHub. It's one of my favorite features of GitHub is that they were one of the early adopters of the U2F FIDO, whatever, FIDO Alliance's U2F thing, which is awesome. So let's go ahead and copy this and go ahead and check it out. Git clone. I'm going to clone it down. Now, if you notice, I haven't actually used this repo in a while. I think the newest thing is February 2016. Anyway, we are going to copy, let's just move it in. Twitch tracker over to here. And you can see the disaster of a thing that's already in there. Twitch tracker. Did it add the swap file? It did add the swap file. I don't think you want my Vim swap files. And there's no git ignore in this project. Wow. Okay. Well, let's remove those cursed DS store files that Mac OS or OS X, as I will always call it, jams in there. And let's get rid of swap files. Let's remove our existing swap file. Hey! Okay. Okay, we're going to remove add git ignore. Why is that all grumpy? I don't know. Status, one more check. Okay, let's commit it. Adding crazy code from, let's call it quote code, because it's almost code, from my live coding and pull. So it is now pushed up there. So if you want to see the code as I hack along, here's the repo. I'm going to paste it into the chat. The repo I'm working from. So it's pasted in the chat now. So if you want to clone that, and I don't know why, some point there'll actually be useful code in there. But right now it's just kind of that you know, the mad rants of Jen, jet lagged in Poland. Okay. So, with that all checked in now, we can check it off of our list. So we've recapped, kinda. I think we're doing some more recapping. We're going to move it all to source control. Oh, keep this marked down. So done stuff is an asterisk, and not done stuff is a dash. Okay, so the to-do list will fade away down, so I know where the bottom of my screen is, so I don't accidentally code off screen, like I'm so prone to doing. And next, let's take a look in here and try and run some of this code. So we have a curl command, and what are we doing here? So we have a cursor token. We're We're getting the top 100 communities from the wonderfully named Kraken API. Here's my client ID. Here's the API, which is mysteriously the API version of the Twitch API specified with a header using the accept header. I've never seen this practice before. I don't know if it's a common practice, and I don't really know the advantages or disadvantages of it. I just know that if you don't specify this header, sometimes you get a different response. The accept seems like a reasonable way to do API versions. And then we're feeding it to Python JSON.tool, which I guess makes it pretty. And then we're grepping for programming. Okay, so this actually splits it out onto different lines. So I was kind of building out a one-liner. So let's go ahead and see if this still works. I imagine this token is probably ancient, but I'm really curious. Let's see if the tokens are preserved, because that's hilarious. Oh, and the reason there's a token here is because the programming feeds were on the second page of communities. And the reason we can't just go and view the programming community is we had to list them, because the list contained different data, specifically the data I was interested in how many people are watching the streams. Okay, so, oh, well, it got grumpy because there's an ampersand in the middle, and that caused this ampersand right there at the very bottom corner, that caused the shell to escape this command. So we need to quote it. Curl. Oh, actually, all I brought down was the URI. I need the whole curl command. Not just, oh, actually, I had the whole thing up here. I'm just tired or something. Foolish, yo. So let's copy the whole command. Control-C out of that. We're going to walk into our Twitch tracker directory, and we're going to run it. And see what, hey! That's kind of surprising. The cursor appears to be durable for weeks. I'm not sure I can rely on that behavior of the API, but you know what? For this one-liner, I'm going to. Because what I should probably actually do in the real one is start with a command that looks something like this. Limit 100, no cursor, and then instead of grepping for programming with context of 2, we are going to grep for cursor, which will give us the cursor. And which I can probably, ooh, didn't like that at all. Oh, well, context cursor. Yeah, grep's going to be grumpy. Trough. Oh, this is scary. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to strip off all the quotes. And then I'm going to awk. Print 1, 2, let's see, 1, 2, 3. Let's see if this works. And 0 is the whole line, so $3. It gets the cursor. Okay. So that's the cursor of the second page. But this, of course, assumes that there's at least 100 other. This assumes that it's on page 2. So let's break this up into a few different chunks. Okay, so here we are. I'm going to exit this file. Oh, that's because I'm not there anymore. I know why it's grumpy now. I moved the file out from under Vim. This means the swap file is orphaned. Let's remove that swap file then. And then we'll call this terabad coding.shell. Here it is, Vim here. The only IDE the world ever needs. And I'm going to cough. One of the more challenging parts of coding on Twitchy land I've discovered is just talking for that long. Okay, I'm actually going to switch my profile over to a blue one. Hey! So you can actually see stuff. So I should probably just make my terminal blue by default. Make it a little bit bigger so you can see it better. And I'm doing this so that you can actually tell the difference between my Vim buffers and my terminal. And it was just called snippets, and then Twitch tracker. Okay, here we are. We're back here. We're looking at this terrible shell script. I don't know if I want to run history on camera, but I want to get those shell commands. If I just up, will they show up? Oh, I just did all that cool stuff. Anyway, let's re-implement it. So we're going to take a look at track.py. Okay, so here's the magic command that gets us the number of communities, or the number of people watching programming. I don't remember, but let's paste it and see what it looks like. So that gives us, what do we all get out of there? We get the number of viewers and the number of channels, which are the two things we actually want. So, being this is a tiny, dirty, awful, evil shell script, let's run this command twice and then feed it to a file. Why not? Or I guess I could remove the new lines with sed. Yeah, so I'm just thinking through, all I want is this and this. I don't want anything else. And I'm going to assume that programming is always on page 2 in this terrible version. So let's start with the shebang. Then cough again. Oh, and if anyone is watching, like, definitely ping me on the chat. I love hearing what you're up to, why on earth you're watching me code. I don't know why anyone would want to watch me fumble around, but definitely say hi. That is the social part of this social programming experiment. It's fun. Anyway, getting back to this, here is the command we're going to run with all of its wonderful brittleness. So this gives us channels. I wonder which of the context is actually hitting. What happens if I reduce the context to 1? Which is now assuming the structure of the JSON. And so 2 is the magic number, because it's catching this one. Got it. Okay. So if I want to do that again, I can do, if I just want the number of channels, I'll grep again, then I'll trough to strip the quotes. Oh no, there are no quotes. I'll strip the comma. I didn't like that at all. Hey, there we go. Okay, so now we have that's the 21 sitting there without anything on either side. So I can then further use awk, or abuse awk, to strip it out. And that looks like 2. Let's find out. So I'll give it a tiny awk program. And awk is like a full-fledged language, but I think I almost never use it for anything other than just columns. Okay, so let's take a look here. Okay, so we want the get number of programming channels. Alright, and this is equal to, oh my gosh, never do this. Oh, there it is. Okay, so this is going to run this command with interesting dependencies depending on this module, which is probably part of the core JSON. It's running Python when not even specifying a number. I'm assuming that it's on page 2 between 100 and 1. I'm assuming the cursor is still alive, which it seems to be evergreen. Then I'm assuming the order of the JSON coming down is the same order. And then the format of the line, as it comes out of this JSON tool from Python, is still the same, so it'll end up in the second column. Seems like a fair number of assumptions for a quick and dirty version. Then we want viewers. And this one was, we go back a few steps. We will grep again for viewers. Then we will Go straight to awk. $2 317. Okay. So there we have our viewers. But of course we want to backtick this. I have one of them fancy keyboards that doesn't really have a tilde, and I'm still getting used to using the function modifier on a real keyboard. Okay, so channels and viewers. I'm not sure what the awk style guidelines say about spacing. Yeah, I'm one of those coding style people. Oh yeah, I need to add the license header too. So let's grab the license header right from the other file we just edited, so that you have clear instruction on your ability to reuse this file. We'll put it below the shebang, because this has got to be the first line, because Unix. So let's drag that down a little more. Okay, so what else we got going on here? So now we have the channels and the viewers, and what we want to do is we have our, now we need a timestamp. So I think the date command will do that. But can I pass the date command a format string? Ah, I can. And it looks like it's a pretty simple format string it accepts. So let's do... Doesn't like that at all. Maybe it needs to be quoted. -f fmt date. -d dst -r t west stuff -f fmt date. Okay. Well, the help didn't quite work. I could look at the man page, but I think instead I am going to bring up Stack Overflow. Okay, so the date command. This would be Mac OS, but anyway, shell date command. I'm not sure how much this changes. See, I never know what to put at the top of these Stack Overflow queries. Bash date? Shell date? POSIX date? I think Linux is what most people who ask these kinds of questions, how they would phrase it, even though OS X is FreeBSD based, yada yada. Anyway, let's do Linux, date command, format. Oh my gosh. Shockingly, it didn't lead to a Stack Overflow post. Oh, okay, so it's -- date. That might actually work. Really? Oh no, so this is taking a date string and formatting it. I just want it to output in a certain date. Oh, here it is. Date, and it's a plus sign. Okay, that's reasonable. So, let's try date plus... Hey! That doesn't quite do what I wanted to do. 17. Hey, that's right. Okay. Percent day. Okay. Percent M. And that gives me the year, the month, and the day. And then, why not? That gave me the month and the day again. Oh, because that. Oh, the M is minutes. Hours is, hey, 11:06. But I wonder if that hour is in 24-hour time or 12-hour time. Display the hour in capital H, thanks to this file, is in 24-hour format, which is exactly what I want. Okay. So that's not really, I mean, I should be using an ISO date or something like that. But that is good enough for me. So I can see the change over time. But wouldn't like just a rounded ISO format date be better? Probably. ISO 8601 date formats. Okay, so I have part of it. Combined date and time. Okay, so then you do a capital T. And then you have the hours, the minutes, and the seconds. Can I just truncate it? Based on this format, it has, what does the Z stand for? Representations must be written combined numerals and certain characters that are given specific meanings within the standard. What does the Z mean? The Z, if you so aren't so inclined. Okay, UTC. The data is in UTC, says the time zone. It's not in UTC. It's in my time zone. So I will just leave that Z off. Oh, I could also specify a time zone. I'm not going to be that precise. It's going to look like that. It's kind of, I don't think it's actually ISO 8601 compliant, but I bet Sheets will parse it. Let's find out if Sheets can understand this kind of date. I do not want to take a tour. I just want a new blank sheet. You are going to paste in my date. Okay. So, do you understand if I format this like a date? Do you know how to parse this? No, you don't know how to parse this. Of course not. Date time. No, you have no idea. You just think it's a string. Okay, whatever. That's good enough for me. I'm going to stick with my weird format. Even though Sheets doesn't understand it, I'll deal with that later. Okay, so now I have that. Let's do now our timestamp, which is accurate to, that's literally a timestamp. I do not want a literal of a timestamp. I want a command that will give me a timestamp. Excuse me. Missed my mute button there. Okay, so now they have those three things. Now we need to record it to a file, and I'll just stick it in this directory, and I'll just run it with the local cron tab, and this will fill in the gaps till I get the real one implemented. So it's worth kind of the 30-40 minutes to implement. So let's echo channels, viewers, and timestamps. So timestamp, channels, viewers. Let's curly brace these off so that they're happier, and let's quote the whole thing. Quote. So curly brace. So we're going to echo that, and we're going to echo it into what am I calling this? Twitch tracker. So data dot CSV, because it is comma separated, right? We can get rid of these spaces. Let's see what happens when we actually run this. Terabad coding. Oh, I am, wait, I'll slow it all. Because I changed the permissions and then got a little grumpy. And hey, it didn't do anything. There we go. I ran the commands, but I didn't actually sign them to anything. Let's try running it again. actually have data there. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a cron tab on my laptop, or maybe I'll dump this on some VM somewhere. Sandbox it away from my actual development environment. I think I'll do that. Then I'll just have it run for a while. So let's go do that. So we're going to go to console.cloud.google.com. We are going to not work on Githiator. We are working on something else. Let's go to the Tinker project. I think this is my general purpose tinkering project. We're going to fire up a compute VM. And I do not have billing set up on this yet. So we're going to go back over to the Githiator project. And I've already set up a billing profile on this. So I can go ahead and create a VM instance. I do not want it in Europe. I want it in the United States. Central 1F, I think that's where I have a lot of stuff running. And let's call it the Twitch tracker. And we do not need a lot of stuff. So we're going to get a super tiny VM, which only ends up costing $4 a month. Because we don't really need any CPU time for this. We just need a cron tab, essentially. And we can leave the firewall locked down because we don't need any inbound traffic. But based on the way I've written the script, this VM is probably going to get pwned anyway pretty fast. Just because if you are sneaky, you can construct a community name on Twitch and use it to do remote code injection, remote code execution on this VM. So I'll be partitioning this one off from the other stuff. That is another reason that doing things with shell scripts like this is a really terrible idea in production systems, because they are just it is really hard to make them not vulnerable to remote code execution. There are just so many ways, because all I have to do is figure out how I'm doing, reverse engineer how I'm doing this graphing and this parsing, and you can stick commands in there, and then I might there's probably an easy way to get me to just run that output. Actually, this one doesn't look too bad. I'm trying to think of ways you could construct a community name to do code injection. I don't know if you can convince grep to execute code. Awk, you might be able to inject something, because this is just running a printed up program here. Yeah, there's probably some RCs that I cannot identify at the top of my head. General, the rule of thumb is don't do things with shell scripts. Even though, you saw how fast that was. This is such a fast and dirty way to get these things working. So let's SSH into this thing. We're going to SSH in directly. Can I SSH in? Is it set up that way? Have I set up the firewall rules to allow me to SSH in? Yeah, I did, apparently. So I'm going to click on that. Going to SSH in. We will do the dance while the keys are copied to the VM. Establish the connection to the SSH server. Oh my gosh, that font is so tiny. Make dir, yay. So, and I'm going to copy code in the worst way possible. What did I call this thing? Let's call it yay. And we're just going to paste the code in. And we're running in a different operating system. Let's see if it actually works. So we're going to chmod it so I can execute it. Hey, it actually worked. Sometimes there's differences, especially because I did my development on a BSD-based system. A lot of these POSIX command line tools behave a little bit differently. And that's okay. Okay, so this running. So next, so this is run by which? So. But see, when cron tab runs a program, when cron runs a program off the cron tab, it has the environment is set up differently. Setup is the root user typically, and or I guess I could modify my own cron tab. But anyway, the environment's not really set up at all. So let's modify the script a little bit so that it'll run on this system. And wow, that syntax highlighting is pretty dark. See, what was it called? It was user bin Python. So we're gonna need to point it to like which of these, but like which awk will probably be around. User bin. Oh, maybe Python will be around too then. I think it'll probably be able to find Python. Sometimes you have to tell it where to find some of the programs you want to use when you write these things. Okay, so let's just fire up a cron tab and make it work. So, it's been a while since I've modified a cron tab on, what is it, Ubuntu? Debian? What am I running? It is indeed. I don't know what image it's running off of. Ooh, an Ivy Bridge. Okay. So let's go back to the create dialog and see. Oh yeah, so it's Debian. Okay, 10 gig persistent disk. So let's go find, figure out, refresh how to actually use cron tab. We'll go to the Wikipedia article for cron. Make it a little bigger so you can follow along. And it's minute, hour, day of month. So if I wanted to run every hour or so, it's going to be like 0 star 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 star, and then the command. Okay. So if I want to edit, so it's going to be like 0 and then star, 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 and A. So 4 stars. Now we want the path to this, which is slash oops, oh, I closed my whole SSH session. Okay, let's SSH back in. I didn't have the path to the script like off the top of my head. Make that all big so it's easy to see. And so there's that command. Bin sh. Okay, so we'll get this up there. So I need to tell which shell to use. No, I think it'll just know to run it in the shell. Will it have write access to this path? Currently, this path is not writable. I don't know if the cron user is going to be able to write here. Well, let's find out. Okay, so the full path to the command is going to be this. That's going to run it. We get another entry on the data CSV. There are now okay, that's the time. There are now 32 channels and 339 people watching. Apparently it's picked up even in the last few minutes. Pretty cool. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take this big old command and we're going to add it to our cron tab, which was going to be 1, or that's any minute, so I guess it could be 0, and then 4 stars, and then that command. And then I think with Control D to exit. So that cron tab command is pretty Spartan. So where does that cron tab actually live? Cron how to. So I'm not actually sure oh, cron tab -E, that's the thing I was missing. Which will open it up in the default editor, which is of course Vim. Of course we can use Vim. And there's my cron tab. It actually did get written. Because I guess by default it opened it up in, I don't know what I was editing in, Ed? But whatever. So it wrote it, and now it should run every hour. But let's change this for a sec so we can actually see it run. Let's run it every minute. And let's see if it actually ends up writing any additional data. Because otherwise, we get to start debugging why it can't edit anything. By default, all are logged in the syslog. So like if there's a permissions issue, we'll see it there. Okay, well, I'm going to let this run for a couple minutes, and I'm going to take a quick break. I will be back in just a moment. So let me switch over to the hiding screen. Super duper hacker mode engaged. I'll be back in just a moment. And I'm back. Okay. Thanks for bearing with me for that moment. And let's take a look, and it's been over a minute, but nothing seems to have run. Tail-f should pick up those changes, but they have not. So let's go take a look at the syslog and see if there's anything in there. This probably also has some stuff I shouldn't be showing on screen in here, but whatever. Let's take a look at it. I can shut down this VM after the broadcast is over. Accounts, removing user. So it's tried to run it. No MTA installed, discarding output. So does it actually run every moment? Oh, it's trying to write it to the local file. So it's running. It's probably running fine. It's just the Twitch track script. Because the path from which it's running is who knows what. So when it's outputting the data, it's appending the data.csv, but it's actually appending to whatever the data.csv in whatever directory the script is being run in. Now I bet if we tail-f our data.csv, we should see lines getting added every minute or so. That is assuming the cron user can actually do it right here. Let's tail that syslog again. So we can see that it did indeed again run it at 26:27. Hey, it appended it again. Okay, so it's running now, it's working. I'm going to back this off to run once an hour at the 0th minute. That is assuming 0 is not some special. I assume it's 0 indexed on time. Yeah, it's been a long time since I've used system cron tabs. Okay, so this will kind of collect data for us while I work on a better solution, which is one that runs in a cloud function that I can leave in production land forever. So let's copy this file back over, of course, the wonderful way. Copying and pasting, because that's a great way to copy stuff around, right? Just make sure that no lines got chopped. Hey, that's a big improvement. The SSH thing used to chop off those lines with the explicit hard lines, but that appears to be all better now. Okay. So this path doesn't really, that's not the current local path, but whatever. I can have the script figure out where it's running from and do a relative path, but not right now. And this has a lot of white in it. My syntax highlighter tells me something is very broken. So, and something is very broken up here. There we go. The joys of syntax highlighting. It tells you when things are off by a little bit. To change to a... Yeah, I mean there's ways to make this actually work better, but I just wanted something quick and dirty. And hey! I ran a little... Oh wait, this is not right either. There we go. Okay, so... Is this safe? Let me stretch it around to make sure there's not any new lines hiding on the edge. Looks good. Okay, so that is deployed. And that's going to start tracking some data in the background while we hang out. And no gets, because I'm still logged into the SSH session. Let's leave there. Go back to our local one. Let's add, let's rename Terabad coding to something else. To crude shell script. We're not going to check the data in. A crude shell script version to tide us over the JS1 works. It's also kind of a good test. I can compare the data between them. So we'll submit that up there for now. Okay, so we have a shell version, we have a URI. I don't need those license headers anymore. What if we want to do this in actual JavaScript? Let's see if there's a client library for JavaScript that might make some of this easier. And hey, there is. So let's go find out if this does what I want it to do. This is a JavaScript SDK to provide rich functionality for accessing the Twitch API. It includes Twitch Connect, which allows users to bring their Twitch accounts into your application. Does this actually get us that much? So you can init the SDK. It has jQuery in the documentation, which means it might be kind of old. Yeah, this is 5+ years old. It's anything that's actually being maintained. There is a couple other modules, the Twitch API module, and this is for the official Twitch v3 API, MIT licensed, but I think we are playing around with the we're playing around with the v5 API. So whatever we want to use, we should probably find something that supports the v5 API. And it's gotten some activity within the last 8 months, but I know some of the data I need is only visible in the v5 API. So not that one. How about Twitch-SDK? These are all third-party libraries. This one's also, most of the activity is more than a year old. So it doesn't seem like there's any turnkey SDK. This is always kind of worth the time to poke around. Let's see if the main documentation links us to any client libraries. Not much here. Okay, well, the API is actually pretty simple. I don't think we're going to be that bummed out about it, especially because those tokens are evergreen, it seems, so those paging tokens, so we can kind of assume we can just page for a while. So I think we should just build this in plain old JavaScript on Node. And yeah, I don't see anything that's like going to be a shortcut here. So we're just basically going to reimplement the shell script in Node, and then we're going to like make it more robust by like paging through the results and looking for the actual programming community and things like that. So let's go ahead and open it up in a text editor, which always opens them off screen for some reason. So none of you can see my code by default, which might be a better default, actually, the more that I think about it. So, we want a file. We want a little node module. So, first we want to do a network request. I don't remember what is the modern way of doing a network request in JavaScript. Which is really sad. Oh yeah, like request. Node request. I think I played around with this not too long ago on this very channel when I was doing other stuff. Oh hey! So, a chat message from Slayer Darth. You're interfering with the Twitch API? I don't know if I'm interfering with the Twitch API so much as interfacing with it. I'm trying to figure out when is a good time to stream. Is that meta or what? Basically, I'm writing these tools so that I can figure out when there is an excess of people watching people code combined with a drought of people actually live coding. Pretty silly, isn't it? It's also just kind of an excuse to kind of screw around with a cloud function on a kind of running on a cron tab. A simple enough problem to kind of be able to focus on learning the tools. So this is request, which is simple enough. Runs the callback. And let's just go ahead and port this on over. So let's open up another editor. Actually, I'll just get it from my terminal. We have our crude, terrible shell script. Let's go ahead and get that URI. Whoop. Slayer Darth asks, cool, I'm migrating from pure JavaScript to Node and TypeScript. So I will see what cool Node tricks I can pick up from you. Well, thank you. You'll probably not pick up any wonderfully insightful Node tricks from me, because one, I'm not doing anything in TypeScript yet, which I should probably actually start spending time on now that it's starting to hit critical mass, and my limited experience with it has told me that it is awesome, because I like data types. But the other reason is I still have really no idea what I'm doing in JavaScript land. Okay, so we need to set a couple headers, our client ID, and then there's the URI. Let's copy this over. So that's the stuff we want. We want, how do I set headers on the requests? Request is has nothing and then a function header. And there's the URI. Streaming data down. That's a neat feature. We just want to set a couple request headers. And this is deja vu. I'm pretty sure I've been here, but this is what happens when I touch something and then don't come back for a couple weeks. I forget a lot of it. Custom HTTP headers. Duh. Set an options bucket. And then we pass it in front of the callback. Oh, and the URI is part of the options bucket. Okay. And there's a headers attribute. That makes a lot of sense. So let's go ahead and set a couple of headers. And set that client ID header. And our magical URI with our apparently evergreen paging tokens, which I still can't believe that token works 3 weeks later. Which means they're not really using like tokens the way one would expect. So Slayer Darth says, I'm still trying to wrap my head around ES6 syntax with all the cool JS, which all the cool JS framework kids on the block are breezing through ES8. Yeah, I agree. I am in a similar spot, which is one of the reasons I'm doing these streams. Is I'm usually I'm kind of a Luddite when it comes to new programming practices and frameworks, because some of them like splash and then disappear so fast. So I usually wait till things are pretty established, which has some benefits because there's a huge body of cool resources out there to get up to speed. But the downside is there's usually something else newer and shinier just ahead of the curve, like already being deployed in production. Oh, and if you notice, one thing I'm doing here that's different is I'm not, I spent a lot of my early streams trying to really learn promises, and I basically get them now, but there's still a lot of cognitive load involved in using them, so I'm just going to go back to callback hell, maybe for this whole script, just because it's easy and it's simple. Okay, so we have this thing hacked up. Let's see if it actually works. So no Twitch tracker, and hey, cannot find miles request. Let's install request. Hey, it ran, great. So I got back this giant blob of beautiful, not pretty at all stuff, and somewhere in here is my stream that I care about. So now I need to iterate through the stream. So I should probably like keep that status code. Oh, error, okay. So if there's an error, if no error, we will do stuff. So I need to parse that. Oh my gosh, this is embarrassing. I forgot how to parse JSON in JavaScript, because back in the day we used to just eval it. Isn't that madness? So making sure that I don't do anything, I think it's just like JSON.parse. Yeah, oh my gosh, a W3 Schools article came up for something I did. How embarrassing. Let me make sure that there's no like gotchas here in terms of like, oh my god, you're going to inject vulnerabilities into your thing. A function that prescribes how the value originally produced by parsing is transformed. Oh cool, so you can send your own receiver now. I didn't know that. See, this query was worth doing. I didn't know that you could specify your own receiver for JSON.parse. So if there's no error, otherwise we're just going to something went really wrong. Otherwise, we're just gonna I'm just going to log it out. So we're going to parse it. Communities, lists. This camel case is the popular style. Layered out through parts. I have not touched promises yet. I really like template literals from ES6. Did JavaScript offer string interpolation prior to ES6? I can't remember. So the template literals, I think they're new in ES6. I don't think there was anything before. I think we were just building strings the old-fashioned way with the plus signs and the quotes, which is like thinking back to JavaScript way back in the day. I think that may have been something that they like erroneously copied from Java in that quick mad dash to build a language that has some resemblance to Java so they could release it as JavaScript. But yeah, string handling in JavaScript has always been really poor. That's also one of my favorite things to see improving over time is like improved string manipulation. Because that's one of the things, like I swear most of the bugs I write in code come from string manipulation. So the more tooling there is built into the language is common across the entire developer ecosystem for string manipulation, the happier I am. Because like there's all sorts of cool libraries out there that are third party for doing string manipulation in many languages, but like none of them have complete saturation. So like things drift apart and you know everybody learns different gotchas from these different libraries. Okay, so let me actually move my dependency actually up to the top. I can go to this now. Okay, so that's going to make our request. So layered out reports. When it comes to string manipulation, I really like the built-ins that allow me to bypass writing a regular expression. I agree. I'm one of those people who will chain split sometimes instead of writing a regular expression, just because it's safer. Regular expressions, you know, having a language within a language always makes it harder to write quality stuff, and more importantly, it like kind of like just sabotages all the future people reading my code, including myself. Because like even after just 3 weeks of coming back from my quick stream in Poland, like I had no idea what I was thinking 3 weeks ago. So it's amazing how fast our memories flush out this like state of what's going on in our code. Okay, so anyway, communities list json.parse. Let's see if there's actually. Let's see if this actually does its thing. Let's see if this works. So let's give it a kick. And then after that, I will iterate through. Oh, it exploded. Text is not defined. Of course, text is not defined. That's response. That's body. Response body. So let's drag that up there. Let's give that a kick. And hey, it's actually parsed now. That's kind of cool. And it's, of course, a bunch. Is it an array of. It's a associative array with an array in it. And like 100 streams. So now I've actually learned at some point how to just map this back with like a nice snazzy one-liner. Oh my gosh, so much scrolling. No scrolling for me. Okay, so I just want to go index in and go to communities. So I'm just going to assume this communities element is there. That's safe, right? Does that work? Let's find out. Hey, it looks like it worked. That's kind of cool. Okay, so now I just want to iterate through this and then inspect each one. So for in Brian communities list. Good old classic iterators. This should just be, I'm in ES6 land. I can start to use some ES6 stuff. Let community equal communities list. Because for each is weird in JavaScript. If so what I want to do is I want to look at the name. And what we want is programming. So found it. So and then what we're going to do is let's just log it out. Okay, I know this is old style stuff, but let's give that a spin, see what happens. Hey, it actually ran, and it found the programming community. I can't believe that worked on the first run. I assumed there was something stupid going on. So, Clear Earth mentions that is not actually bad at writing regular expressions. I'm just naturally, it just naturally scares me. And yeah, and it is a completely reasonable thing to be afraid of regexes. They're a very easy way to inject all sorts of baddies into your software. Like if you go look at like those like cross-site scripting, vulnerability, pen testing cheat sheets, half of those things in there are just different ways people have figured out to try and circumvent people's weird regex parsers. And there are whole like I've read whole long papers on like the challenges in writing a a regex-based XML parser and stuff like that, where even at the fundamental level, there's like people have gone to the trouble of writing mathematical proofs on why regular expressions are bad at parsing things. But man, they're so quick and they're so dirty. They're a very powerful tool. I still write a lot of Perl-E regex programs in my day-to-day, and they're great. But you're right, they're dangerous, and they have performance gotchas. Like it's really easy to write like n-squared parsers with them, and like they're just so hard to read. So even if we're all talented at writing regexes, I'm still not talented at reading them. And you read code a lot more than you write it. Anyway, so I got my blob of stuff. Let's go through and just grab channels and viewers. And I can break after this is done. And if I never find it, then my program will just exit without doing anything. To deal with never finding it. Like, for example, page through results. So what we'll actually want to do at some point is page through a few pages and then give up after like 4 or 5. Okay, because right now we're assuming it lives on that page. Oh, that ligature kind of freaked out for a sec. Yeah, we're assuming it's on page 2, between 101 and 200, which is bonkers. Actually, I'm going to put a to-do up there so I don't forget. Don't assume it's on page 2. That's madness. But the token seems to be, the cursor seems to be evergreen. This is the kind of stuff that when I design an API, like sometimes I'll purposely make the cursor, like even if the underlying architecture allows that cursor to be evergreen, I might not, because I don't want someone to depend on this cursor being around forever. Because you make some change to the internal system and it breaks all the clients, which is a bummer when doing API design. Okay, so I found it. Now what I'm going to do is I will scoping is function anyway in JavaScript, so I can just declare them here. Because JavaScript's insane. You can declare a variable. Yeah. Scoping is weird in JavaScript. Something I'll never really get my brain wrapped around. Okay, so viewers and channels. Community. And did I successfully transcribe those identifiers, viewers and channels? Okay, so I got my viewers and my channels. Should probably get some kind of timestamp of when I'm actually running. So how do I get the current date? It's probably just a date function. So it's not a built-in thing. I know in the DOM there's some way to get it. Current time. Date time. Yeah, date time. That's what I was thinking of. Oh, there's a date object I instantiate. Okay, that's straightforward. Let date equal new date. Hey, there we go. Hey, it's already in an ISO timestamp. That's perfect. That's exactly what I want. Well, if I just print it out. I mean, I'm assuming like it's a date object, so it has more stuff to it. But when I just like, let's see what happens if I stringify it. Oh, that's not what I wanted. So if I just stringify it, what does it look like? Hey, it's still in ISO format. Okay, good enough for me. So I can just do a new date there. I should probably do it at the top of the program, though. Where would I do it? Let when run date timestamp. Let's call it timestamp, which defaults to the current time, and it knows how to print it out in a beautiful ISO format. So what is the format I wanted to do was that CSV type stuff. So I'm just going to JavaScript template strings. I forgot template literals. Oh, use the backtick, and then you can just use like a shell type expression. Okay. So the backtick, and then what we want to do is we want to do. What do we call it? Timestamp? Yeah. And we want channels. Then we want viewers. Someday I'll learn how to actually use that stuff. Okay. So if I run this, I should get out the output that I want. There we go. Someday I'll learn how to gracefully exit. Cool. Okay, so that it does give me CSV, although it changed it to my time zone when I ran it in a script versus, but that's still fine. Oh, it's a really long date format. That's not actually what I wanted. So console log, that's weird. Whatever, it's a timestamp. I can deal with it. No, I want a sortable date, because one of the issues with these is they don't sort right. So I'm going to go figure out why, when I do timestamp in a format string. Okay. Let day, my date, equal new date. Log. Also that log. So if this changes it, I will giggle, because sure enough. So okay. What can I run on it? To UTC string. Hey, there's a UTC string. How about to, is there an ISO? Oh, to ISO string. Thank God for REPLs. That's what I want. I want the ISO string. Okay, so if I go here, I'll just copy and paste it because typing errors are bad. Oop. So let's try running that again. So exit that. Go to the Twitch tracker, and hey, it's in a date format I like. I like ISO dates. So Darth mentions, sorry, I was trying to log into Bitbucket via Google, and I had my email autofilled into the Google sign-up page email field, and returned a validation message. Please enter a telephone number or email address. Trying to, oh yeah, so Bitbucket might be using some kind of weird thing in there. It can be dangerous, yeah, especially when like used for validation on forms and stuff like that. Regexes are so powerful, but they do have puzzling results sometimes. Especially, I guess a lot of the JavaScript ones that, like, for that validation message you saw, it was the way they do the trigger, which always drives me nuts because I use a password manager. And password managers paste in passwords, and sometimes they look for like a key event to trigger when a field is not empty, which is silly. Okay, cool. So we have this. It runs. I want to stash it in a spreadsheet, but it's noon now, and I want to wrap up in the next half hour. But I do want to get this up into Firebase land. So how do I want to try and wrap this up in the next half hour? So Slayer Darth reports, I should really be more security conscious. I use the browser built-in password managers. Should probably use a dedicated password manager. So like the browser built-in password managers are actually pretty good. I like them all. I've read a lot of kind of like security breakdowns of them, and they seem to be they seem to work pretty well. And like one of the reasons I use a dedicated password manager is just because then it works cross-platform for me. Because I use different browsers on different platforms, like iOS versus Android versus, and also mobile apps and that kind of stuff. So that's why I use a dedicated password manager. But like you don't like the built-in browser password managers are excellent also. So if it fits your needs, then it's great. You know. All we have to do, we don't have to be the most brilliant, most privacy security conscious person. We just have to be one step ahead of most other people. Using a password manager at all and not reusing your passwords between sites is a great way to accomplish that. Although password managers themselves are a polarizing topic in the security space. So hard to say anything with definite because people have good arguments for why they're bad too. It's complicated. Authentication will always be complicated. It's one of those problems that just is never going to be easy, and that's a bummer. Okay, so we have our Twitch tracker program. Let's go get that up into a cloud function. So we'll do the Firebase route again because I love the Firebase tooling around. Cloud functions. Because you can use them directly. I just like them more. Okay, so we're going to create a new project. And I'm going to call this Twitch tracker. Even though it's not really tracking tricks or anything, I'm just looking at programming streams, whatever. Like I don't want to violate some Twitch policy or anything like that. Because I did indeed read the API policies, and this seems to be well within their terms. It's even one of the drop-downs when you build your application. You can say you're building an analytics platform. I guess this could be considered the derpiest analytics platform ever made. I'm analyzing one thing. So we're doing the dance. I don't know why this is taking longer to spin up today than historic. But, oh, there it is. Okay. So we have that. I'm going to upgrade it because the cloud function stuff works a lot better. Let me do that. So I'm going to upgrade this. Billing account. Whoop. I'm going to drag this off screen. And okay, I'm going to go into super secret hacker mode real quick while I get my billing account set up. So let's go into hiding. And I'm hiding. I'm setting up billing information because I want to make sure everything looks good. Select project. Okay, so I'm going to have to do some kind of like roundabout things. I already have a billing account that I want to associate it with that is controlled by another account. So the way you do this is you go into like the users and permissions area, and you invite the collaborator that owns the billing account that you want to use. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'm going to add them as an owner. And then I'm going to go to their email box, accept the invitation. Then from the console logged in as the billing account owner, I will use my FIDO U2F security key again. This little thing, boop. Speaking about being security conscious, those things are amazing. But it's not picking it up right now. Might be because the security key kind of got smashed recently. Do I have a backup handy? I usually keep a couple backup keys around. And I do. I have a second security key, which is also enabled on this account, which I'm going to give a spin in case it's broken. Okay, so let's go ahead, accept that invite. Invalid credentials. Okay, so that security key is not set up on that account. Let's go back. Not now. Okay, so I need to go find my backup security key because I seem to have broken this one. So I will be back in just a moment. I have another one across the room. Unmute, and then plug in my backup security key, because I have like 10 of these things. It's very rare that they'll break this bad. Oh no. Okay. We're going to run that in. We're going to tap the security key. And hey, I'm finally authenticated. Okay, thanks for bearing with me through all that. I will finish up the last few steps of setting up billing. Then I'll show you some of the interfaces I use to set it up. So now I'm going to upgrade this one to Blaze. Set up the billing account. And it's set up. Okay, so I'm going to close these, switch back into regular view, make sure it's been applied by reloading the page. There we go. Okay, so back live again. Okay, so what all I did is I went into the console, and I have another account that can manage the billing. So I went to users and permissions, and I added my other account to this one. And then I logged in as that account, my Google corporate account, and associated it with the billing profile I use. And this is actually one of my favorite features of just kind of Google Cloud Platform in general, is you can break permissions down by these projects, and then you can set up billing across a whole bunch of different projects. So for a company, you can have different projects for different teams that have different security policies and have separate virtual networking stuff all partitioned off, so that it's easier to control access between them. And you can be very explicit about things like network ACLs and stuff. And at the same time, still manage billing centrally in the organization. And this is kind of a microcosm of that. Okay, so now that this is set up, let's go over to functions. And this is where we're going to create it, but we're going to do it from the command line. So back to the shiny blue command line. See, my Firebase tools probably need to be updated. Hey, they don't. So we're going to do a Firebase init here. Oh, there is a new version of the tools. I'll do that later. We're going to set up just functions. We're going to set up a default project for this directory. Yeah, we'll use the default. Sure, so the dependencies and npm, then we're going to kind of merge these scripts together. Yeah, the projects feature is an ability to have multiple projects on the same account, so you can switch back and forth between configurations. It's, for example, a way to deploy to staging and production and all that stuff separately. Great. Okay, so now we have functions. Let's move Twitch tracker over into functions. We don't need the node modules here anymore. We're moving it all into functions. And we're going to install and save request. And then, do we have the other one open still? We do. No, that's the shell script. We have Twitch tracker, which is the old handle before we moved it in. And now we want to, okay, so this is a very simple function that's triggered by an HTTP request. That is how we're going to trigger ours, because that's how we're going to wire our cron up. Let's take the code from our Twitch tracker, make it bigger for easier seeing. Then let's merge them. And then got those. We're going to do this all inside this function. So is this smart enough to do? Oh, it's tabbed. Okay. Well, my VI configuration is messed up. But I will fix that off camera because that's boring. But yeah, the reason I'm groaning is because VI, when I did a shifted all this code over, these lines are all prefixed with tabs now. Actually, this is all tabs. And I definitely fall in the camp of spaces over tabs. What's up with my shell color scheme with the blue background of death? So the reason I switched to the blue background for my shell is I use black generally, but I wanted to make it easier for people to tell the difference between when I'm in a Vim buffer and when I'm on the shell. And blue was also, in addition to being the background color for the blue screen of death, was the background color for my quick basic editor, my first programming editor that I ever used. So it's something I'm comfortable with. Blue with the white text, nice high contrast. Not as terrifying for me as it might be for other people. So let's just write this out. Something went really wrong. Okay. So apparently, because I'm using tabs or spaces, I don't even know what it's using. I'll just let it auto shift. And we're going to grab this, and we're just going to write this out as a response to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trigger this from the browser, and then I just want to see the response get written out here. So I think this should just work. Let's name a method that's mnemonic, track Twitch, and let's go ahead and deploy it. Or maybe I can run it. Maybe I'll run it first. Hey, it works, okay. So, oh wait, that's Twitch tracker. Does that actually work? I don't really know what that's doing, but I think there's a runner toolkit that got released since I last streamed. But let's just deploy it to production, because why test when I can deploy to production? So we're going to do Firebase deploy, we're going to send it on up there. And yes, I started in BASIC. Okay, so sec no project is active run, -- project ID, or define an alias by Firebase use add. So will it tell me what I can pick from? Which project do you want to add? I want to add the default. Can I list projects this way? Firebase use. Will this tell me which projects I have? I want to set, so apparently my Firebase SDK has ended up in a weird state. So I need to go figure out how this project stuff works. So there's actually a project which is probably in my Firebase RC. Nope. Firebase.json. Nope. Okay. So I'm going to update my tools because I think there's something on. Update is not a command. Let's find out how to update. I remember it saying at the beginning when I ran this. So which Firebase CLI features I want to use? Functions. So my project is all messed up. Okay, so if I wanted to fire Firebase help, how do I self-update? Okay, I can actually use a project idea here. I will not update. I just need to specify Twitch tracker. Oh, I might be logged in as the wrong user. That's probably the problem. Yeah, I was logged in as another gibberish user that I created once upon a time. So I'm going to log in now, but I have to go into hacker mode because this is going to display a URI that allows you to do dangerous stuff. So I'm going to Firebase login. And I think the reason it's so grumpy is because the account I had it authenticated as is basically gone. Like I disassembled that account and signed everything out. So see, hey, it's working again. Okay, so I'm going to switch back over to live mode again. We can see that the project does exist again. Twitch tracker, Firebase use. Now we'll know how. Now using project Twitch tracker. Okay. Firebase deploy only functions. So this should deploy them up there. And this also kind of exposed some weird issues. The Firebase command line gets a little bit wonky when you have like an account that's been gutted and mostly shut down. So the first time you deploy functions, they can take a moment. The deployment time has sped up a lot since they were released. So let's take a look at functions. Does it show up yet? Does it show up yet? Just reload, reload, reload. And so it's 12:17, so I want to wrap up in like the next 13 minutes. So rather than start diving into how to work with the spreadsheet API right now, once this deploys and we get it working, assuming it works on the first go, which I have faith it will, then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to dump it into a real-time database. So I'm just still waiting for APIs to activate. Well, anyway, in the meantime, I can start working on the real-time database part of it. So I'm going to go over to database. I'm going to get started with the real-time database, which is the older, cooler. I love the real-time database. There's this new Firestore thing that just entered, Cloud Firestore, that entered beta. It is also awesome. It's just less mature, and as discussed, I'm a Luddite. Oh wait, it's finished deploying while I was blabbing. So let's go over to functions and do our testing before we dive into the real-time database part. So I can run this, whoop, and it should just output a 404. I guess it's not quite there yet. It's deployed, but not enabled yet. Slayer Darth reports, I've been meaning to write a Twitch API console, applications actually. I'm too lazy to give streamers I watch on Streamlink a follow on the site. So kind of implementing your own following mechanism seems like a reasonable way to do it. I mean, it's always fun to play around with the API, so I can totally relate to that. Could not handle the request. I think it's still coming up. As everything comes online, did it see any executions in there? Is there anything in logs? Hey, it didn't work. Request is not a function. Request is not a function. So I messed up something somewhere. So type error, exports Twitch functions on request. Cloud function, various functions. So this sounds like it might be a namespace collision issue. Yes it is. Because in here I have request, the library, and request, the request object coming from the cloud function, are colliding. So I will remove that collision. So the namespace collision hopefully resolved. And while that is going, I'm going to go and look at adding some real-time database stuff to it. Let's go get started. And then I think I need to zoom out to get the adding a new app. What I want is I want the blob of stuff I paste in. Auth not equal to null. So that's a basic new one of those. Let's go to overview, go to web. Let's grab the configuration bundle for this thing. And then we're going to go back over into here. Actually, I think from a cloud function it should just work. Okay, but it deployed anyway. Okay, so switching gears back, since we're toggling back and forth. We're going to go do that. We're going to see if it actually executed this time. It still blew up. So let's go into functions and logging and see what I have done wrong this time. Response.send is not a function because I changed the name of a response. Okay, so in fixing my namespace collision, I caused a different error. Switch, this is index.js. So because the namespace collision, because I'm doing an HTTP request from inside another request handler itself, I've broken everything. Okay, so let's go back here. We want to do Firebase real-time database, which isn't even in here right now. So let's go back to some code I wrote in the past. We're going to go to a repo that I have, repositories, and we're going to go look at some cloud functions I wrote in the past, and we're just going to go grab some stuff from it. So I actually do not remember how much stuff I need to initialize within a function and what's kind of just assumed to be there. And how much of the real-time database stuff I need to do. So here's a function I wrote for a talk a while ago. Actually, I didn't write it. Frank wrote it. I repurposed it. And okay, so event data admin ref root. So there's a reference that's attached to the event that comes through on a database. This is a database triggered event, which gives it a copy of the database. Interesting. So is that available to my function? Even though I'm not. So these are database triggered functions. And what they can do is they actually have a handle on the real-time database as a result of being a database function. But I don't think mine does. I think I need to do the full regular route. Okay, so is it deployed again? It's deployed again. So let's switch gears back to debugging our current function. We'll run it again. We'll see, hey, and there's that thing. Okay, so it worked this time. And it ran, it took, finish with status crash. Finish with status code 200. That's what we want to see, that it actually ran. So now we just want to take that information, we want to dump it into a real-time database. So let's close that. We're going to go back, we're going to do it, we maybe with more boilerplate than we need. I'm just going to go ahead and do it that way. So let me close these windows, go back to here, go back to overview, and get all the initialization stuff I need. So we're going to and it says, wait, I have a config in, oh, that's options, okay. So this is fine. So this has like API key and project ID and a bunch of other stuff for this, and this is overkill, I don't need all of this, but it's fine. So Firebase.database, okay, so let's go to the docs because I can never remember anything. So we'll go back and we'll just do one quick blitz all the way down here. So Slayer reports, by the way, I finally decided to play around the other day with screen recording via FFmpeg. So going to send you a short clip soon of me using the fish shell. Thanks, awesome. Yeah, FFmpeg is amazingly powerful. It does a lot more stuff than you might expect it to be able to do, being a command line tool. But I'm way more productive doing simple edits and cuts with it than like Premiere or something like that. Okay, so let's go take a look. And I forgot actually that this is a function I call or whatever to get the database handle. It is a function. So I call the database function to get a handle on the database. And so then I want a ref. So this is the root ref, so I'm getting a reference on the root of the database. Let's do that for now. And then what I'm going to do is, actually we'll call this stats ref. We'll actually add, we'll work our way in and we'll get the stats. So, stats ref. So now instead of just sending it out on the response body, what we will do is statsref.push, and then we're going back to JSON because we're crazy like that. So we're just going to, because I was originally kind of thinking spreadsheet as the destination in mind, but I don't have that right now. So we are doing it, converting it back over to a hierarchical view. Actually, that doesn't cause any problems. Write to Firebase Realtime database. Data, base. And the spell checker does not like the way Firebase people spell real time. But that's okay. Let's blindly deploy it and see if it runs. And if it does, then I should be able to go here, back to Firebase console, back to Twitch tracker, back to the database. So now I have, and then this one I'll go look at functions. So we'll go see if the function's deployed. Oh, well, of course. I'm missing a dependency. I need to make Firebase available to the rest of the script. Oh, I started coding. I coded below the screen again. I thought I figured out a way to prevent that. Sorry. I've been coding off screen. Anyway, we're going to deploy it, but it's okay because everything I did was broken anyway. So we're going to go ahead and deploy. You get the little there. I have a little window down here to keep me from going off camera. Off screen share. Oh, cool. Thanks for the clip. I'll take a peek at it after the session wraps up in a few minutes. So let's go ahead. Let's see if this actually runs. Oh yeah, and this thing is insecure, like not secured right now. So you can go ahead and run it if you want. Like you can go trigger, hit this URL, and it'll run. So now if this worked, there should be stuff in the database, and this is something I'm actually familiar with, so I would hope it just works. Oh no, because my script isn't authenticated. Well, I'll do the stupid thing for now. And I will make it writable from the whole world. So the thing's going to run again. And hey, there's stats now. Okay. Then I'm going to get one of these chunks for each one of those events. Okay, so now I have something running. And I'm going to... So what I need to do is I need to make it this have... if I want to use Firebase long term, I should set up authentication, which I'm not going to bother to do for this one. Just because... there are, I'm not going to be using this long term. I'm going to move over to a spreadsheet soon. Okay, so I think that's probably good for today. So we have, let's kind of recap what we did. Ooh, let me bring up my fancy ants to-do list. Let me close this. And here's kind of where we started with. So one was kind of recap what we did last time. We did that. And I was very bewildered by the mess of Python code that I pasted in there that was not even compiling Python. It was just kind of a stream of consciousness from the first time I was kind of learning how the Twitch API worked. We reused 0% of that code, which is fine. Then we moved stuff over to source control. Then we did a lazy ray with a one-liner, which I actually ended up deploying and is running on a VM now. I'm actually curious to see like if that keeps working. I don't think it will, just because it's not awesome as I described. It's probably vulnerable to a bunch of code injections, but the VM is locked down enough, and there's no other VMs running on the project. I'm not too worried about somebody causing a catastrophe. It's also a really tiny VM with not much oomph, so I keep an eye on it to make sure it has not been pwned by somebody coming up with a creative community name on Twitch and somehow getting it into the 101 to 200 community list. But I wouldn't put it past someone. That would be pretty cool. Then we ported it over to JavaScript, at least the implementation we had, which is still pretty ugly. We pushed it up to Cloud Functions, which took a lot shorter time than previous times because we've been playing around with it for a while. What we did not do is we did not have a push to a Google Sheet. We did not set up a cron-like thing to get it running in Cloud Function regularly. And we didn't clean up any of the mess. So we will leave these for next time. So this little script that I thought might be a one-shotter looks like it's going to be a 3-session deal. And that's okay. Sometimes it takes a while to pick up APIs and stuff. But it's been fun. So with that done, I am going to call it a day. So thanks so much for listening, everyone. And thanks for chatting with me, Slayer Darth, and anyone else who's watching. if there is anyone watching live, always feel free to use the chat and say hi. It's fun to talk to people while I code. That's why I do this. It's less lonely than coding alone in the dark room. Okay, so thanks much for tuning in, everyone, and I will be back next week with the hopefully the conclusion of this particular project. So thanks, y'all. Bye.